Greetings, mortals, and welcome back to the channel of the one known as Kalen. Things shall be a little different today. As you can tell, the adorable voice of Miss King is absent. The irony of it all is while she has always been reading about possessions and ghost stories and hauntings, she has recently been the victim of one herself. She has become possessed by an entity known as the Flu. Priests could not help her, so she has had to resort to the healing ways of mortals. A doctor. So I shall be the one to tell the stories today. So, without further ado, let's get started.
I have a story that happened just a couple of days ago, January 20th, about 2-3 a.m.-ish. I just wanted to write to see if anyone has seen anything similar. So me and my boyfriend went to park at a parking lot right by a church. We were in his Jeep facing the church and he was telling me his past life story, and I was listening to him talk because it was something heavy that was on his chest that he felt he needed to let out to me. So he works night shift and was on a break, so he gets a call to go back to work at 3. We were pulling out of the parking lot and we noticed 3 deer, and there was an alleyway that went towards the direction to where you can get a good glance at them. My boyfriend asked me if we should pull in to see those deer. So I said yes, and we did, and parked there for a minute staring at these deer, and 2 of them were male and the one was female, but kept walking while the other 2 male deer stopped and stared. We just looked at them and was like, cool, and then we backed out with the headlights facing towards the 3rd deer standing there. We stopped and my boyfriend stared at it and said, "That's an ugly, weird looking deer," and I looked at it. It did not look normal at all. It stared back at us, but the stare looked so eerie. This deer had a white face from the bottom to its eyes, and its nose was pushed downwards like a flat face. The eyes were facing directly to us and not sideways as a normal deer would have. The body was that of a deer, and my boyfriend continued to stare and examine the deer, and I was questioning, like, is that a deer or a different animal? And he's like, no, that's a deer. I stared at it and I told my boyfriend, why are we staring at it? And I looked away because I didn't want to stare at it anymore. And I told him to go, and when we left I was like, that deer did not look normal. And he was like, you've seen that too, right? And I had the chills all the way back home. He told me to not tell anyone what we saw and tried to convince me that we had only seen 2 male deer and not the 3rd one, to help me feel not as scared, considering I was going home alone. I got home safe and went right to sleep. The next morning, me and my boyfriend talked about it and agreed what we both saw, and then stopped talking about it because I can still see how it looked in my mind. But that's my story. It's just been so on my mind because I've never seen anything like that in my life. We are next to a reservation where we were, and not sure if this is relevant, but maybe 30 minutes before we left there was coyotes in the field, whining, and we rolled down our windows to listen to them. And they stopped, so we continued talking. For context, I'm an only child. My first encounter was when I was 5 years old in my bedroom. My bedroom was located in the far part of the house. Of course, my bedroom was pretty much secluded. My bed was one of those old spring mattresses that made sounds every time you moved, and was placed against the wall in the far corner of my room. To set the scene, it was the night before my first day of kindergarten, and I was awake late at night, not from the excitement, just because I had insomnia before my parents even knew. It was around 3 a.m. and I was watching Adult Swim. Yeah, my parents were pretty much hippies, so practically no restrictions on TV. And while I'm lying down, I hear my mattress creaking. I just remember thinking that it was odd because I didn't move at all to make a noise. Without moving, I shifted my eyes down to the end of my mattress to see a literal indentation on the edge. A butt indent. You would think, being a 5-year-old girl, I would have been so scared and run to my parents' bedroom. Wrong. I don't know why, but I wasn't scared. I was chilled and figured whatever this thing was just liked watching TV too. I realized that after a couple of episodes of Family Guy, I should probably get to sleep before school, and I sat up, looked at the indent on my bed and said, I need to go to bed for school in the morning. You can stay if you want, but I have to turn the TV off. The indent slowly lifted as if they were getting up from my bed, and I felt its presence disappear. So, what did I do? Well, as an unbothered 5-year-old, I went to sleep and had that night in the back of my head. I didn't know what a ghost or anything paranormal was. I know a few weeks passed and I hadn't seen it since, but I started to sleepwalk after that night. I'd sleepwalk everywhere in the house, but I frequently would sleepwalk into my parents' room, open their closet door, enter, and face toward their bed. Don't ask me why, because I didn't even know this occurred until family members and my parents would ask me. I was very small and had hair that went past my butt. I was giving Cousin It grudge vibes for sure. My tia even said that one time she slept over at our house and remembers waking up to me facing towards her while she slept on the couch. Playdates in the dark. Although this would occur when I was asleep, during daytime I would come home from school and I'd be babysat by my grandparents in the afternoon, and my younger cousin would be dropped off a few hours later. Usually I would stay away from the back of the house until it was time to sleep. One day I was going to use the restroom and the only sunlight that lit the hallway would come from the bottom of the door. As I walk down the hallway, I see a shadow as if it stepped in front of the door. I knew this wasn't anyone in my household because my grandparents were usually busy in the front of the house. I calmly made a U-turn and forgot about having to pee. I thought that if this thing wasn't going anywhere, then maybe we could be friends and play. Could you tell I'm an only child? I'd close all the doors in the hallway and sit by my parents' door with my Simba stuffed animal that also rattled. Ask to play with me, slide my Simba to the opposite end and it would slide back to me. I was so excited to have a friend to play with. This happened up until I moved to California with my mom. I never told anyone about my friend. Later, I learned that my uncle slept in my room around the World Cup games, and my friend spooked my uncle out 3 times within a couple of hours. Ever since then, and when I visit my dad in TX, I don't feel welcomed in my room. I'm not sure why, but it feels like I'm being watched and overall in a bubble. And what's even more messed up is that my Simba has disappeared and it's nowhere to be found. And I still sleepwalk. I'm 22 years old now. Since my first paranormal encounter, I've experienced so many paranormal encounters to the point where I can at times see and hear people who aren't there. Things flying across rooms in a home I grew up in, and so much more. If you made it this far, thank you for reading my experience. Did you have a playmate from the other side? I lived in a building that was built on what was known as former slave grounds. My apartment, since day one, we experienced doors opening by themselves. We would turn the lights off, and by the time we woke up, we found them on. My sister was scared to sleep in her room. She would hear footsteps walk from one side of her bed to the other. My room was always freezing cold, like abnormally cold. Even during the hot summer, it would be cold. My friends that slept over in my room always felt uncomfortable and got woken up out of their sleep. My boyfriend at the time saw a white figure watching over him while he slept. All of our moods was altered inside the house. We were always angry inside the house. Outside was a completely different story. The last straw was when I was alone in my room and I did a message to my friend in the voice recording. And when I played it back, you heard a voice of a lady in the back saying, "Don't say that." Didn't recognize the voice and I was alone. This was my solid proof that the house was haunted. My mom, a skeptic at the time, couldn't believe what she was hearing, but she agreed to move. Still scared till this day. The one was female but kept walking while the other 2 male deer stopped and stared. How the fuck do they know these things were male and female? Jeez, they were like far away. Did they use binoculars to look at the balls of anything? Okay, anyway. Stopped and stared. There we go. We just looked at them and was like, cool. And then we backed out to the headlights. We just looked at them and was like, you're not helping. Shh, shut the fuck up. I see why you struggle with these things. The people can't fucking write. The grammar is more horrifying than the stories themselves. But anyway, Adult Swim, you fucking perverted kindergarten fuck.